Welcome, ACSA family and friends. As always, I'm honored to serve as your executive director. Thanks for being here tonight. We know this is a busy week for so many of you. We started doing these broadcasts in the spring as we were closing schools and figuring out how to provide food and learning opportunities to our students in the spring. And then throughout the summer, we've talked about reopening. And lo and behold, many of you are reopened, or you're opening this week or next. So it's a busy time for you. For those of you that could make it tonight, thanks for being here with us. We've talked a lot with statewide and even district-wide leaders, superintendents who have been on panels for us, superintendents who are part of our reopening guide work for ACSA. But we haven't talked to site leaders yet. So tonight I'm excited because we get to talk with some of our site leaders about their reopening plans, some of the things that they're working through, some of their successes, some of their challenges. We're going to share all of those with you tonight. We know that the district leadership, the county leadership, they set the framework for how things look throughout the organization, but it's the people at the site that really implement those plans that I think define the success of any good or great plan. So excited to hear from them. By way of announcements, just want to make sure that you know that this week, Daniel Hernandez is going to be a part of our tour that we do on Tuesdays, our ACSA campus tour. Danny Hernandez is a principal at Ethel Phillips Elementary School in Sac City Unified and an ACSA board member. So he's a great principal. Make sure you tune in and check that out. By way of clarifications or state policy issues, it's a bit of a quiet week. I think the things that people are really working through right now. Last week we talked a bit about the elementary waiver and how you could work with your county public health, your labor groups, certainly your stakeholders to get a waiver. We clarified that the waiver and permissibility for small groups to get together are different. The process for getting small groups for pods, if you will, of students, as we discussed several weeks ago. Students with severe disabilities, for example, may not be able to be served in a virtual or distance learning environment. And so some folks are trying to do pods for those students. That process is very, very different from the elementary waiver process. In fact, it's undefined as of yet. We keep pushing for some clarity there so you folks know how to do that. Right now, the directive is from the governor's office to work with your county office and your county public health to get those approved. We also know a lot of you have concerns about how you're going to account for attendance, instructional minutes, independent study, daily accounting for that, which is new. It's a game changer. It really shouldn't be the case, so we're working to clean that up. I just want you to know that we're working with the Education Coalition as well as Capital Advisors to work with the Controller Betty Yee, and we meet regularly to make sure that you are not hurt by this year's audit, that what they're going to look at, well in advance, and there isn't any gotchas by the state. That isn't their intention. So we'll hold them to that and try to provide as much clarity as we possibly can for all of you. Look, they get it. You're out there trying to do your best by your students, by your employees, by your communities. No one's trying to game the system right now. You're working with few resources in incredible times, and they get that. So we're going to remind them that they get that and make sure they support you. Well, hey, let's jump into tonight's topic. We've been talking about reopening schools, and as I mentioned, we've talked a lot about the district-wide or county-wide, even statewide perspective. Now we want to drill down to the implementers, to the site leaders. More than 60% of ACSA's membership is site leadership, site leaders, co-administrators, etc. And so we want to hear from those folks, and we're lucky to have some great ones tonight. So let me introduce our panel. We have Mark Anderson, who who's a principal at Marshall Fundamental School. He's also council president for the Secondary Ed Council here at ACSA. So besides his busy day job, like so many of you, he volunteers to help us, to help serve his colleagues so that their students can benefit. We also have Dion Clark, principal of San Gorgonio, I probably said that wrong, high school. She can correct me, but we're glad to have her. She also serves on the council, so she's willing to volunteer on top of the day job that pays the bills. And then Buck Roggeman, who's a principal of Forest Grove Elementary. He's our council president for elementary ed. So we've got ACSA leadership here. Most importantly, they're practitioners. They're doing the work. They know what they're talking about. I'll just mention and apologize in advance that, Buck's a low energy kind of dude, right? I mean, he's just shy. He's meek. I just apologize. Any of you that know Buck know that I'm totally kidding, tongue in cheek. I was at a leadership assembly when Ralph Porras was our ACSA state president, and Buck was the chair of our leadership summit. And he had the daunting task of getting up and giving a leadership summit update at the beginning of our leadership assembly. Now, leadership assemblies are early in the morning. We've had a long week of governance, working late at night. I can't get going until I hear the students playing music and I have at least one cup of coffee. And so I walked into the event. Buck stands up there, grabbed the mic, and it was like a revival. I was ready to run a 100-yard dash, and I haven't done that since the late 80s. So he's got the energy that I love, Buck. Anyway, to the three of you, thank you for taking some of your time to be with us tonight. Let's dive into your plans. We've heard what superintendents say, as I've mentioned. So I'd like to hear from each of you. What are your reopening plans? How are you ensuring that students are getting high-quality daily instruction, either in a physical, hybrid, or in a total distance learning environment? And so, Mark, let's start with you. Give us that kind of, you could give us the K through 12, focus kind of on middle schools for us, because that tends to be a tough one. As they say, caught in the middle, famously, right? So what are your reopening plans? What does that look like? And how are you ensuring high quality learning for all students that is equitable?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Wes. So we open school a week from today, next Monday. And as we are planning, a lot of it, one of the frustrations as a principal is just waiting for the district to go through their procedures and the negotiations of what it would look like. And that just all really came to a head at the end of last week. So I have about a week to prepare to get school open. It'll be a complete distance learning module. And as the governor says, we built out a bell schedule. So there's about 300 minutes of instruction per day that we'll be doing, a mix of synchronous and asynchronous. My strategy I'm working on right now is my teachers are incredibly anxious. When we went to distance learning in March, everyone used whatever platform they were comfortable with, meaning Google Classroom, there's a program called Skies Learning, etc. Well, now we're making everyone go onto Canvas, which is a great thing to have people do. But there's a lot of anxiety about teachers having to use that. And then our district is also contracted with WebEx to do our virtual learning, where before we used Google Meets. So there's also a lot of anxiety about completely changing the platform. So my first thing is I've got to reduce the anxiety in my teachers, because anxiety just trickles down, right? So if I have anxiety and I pass it on to teachers, so I'm managing it, I've been practicing meetings, I get friends together and I practice different strategies before I bring it to the teachers. And then I give time for teachers to practice and to share lessons and to engage with each other and bring down their anxiety and make them very comfortable as teachers in a virtual environment. Because if they're scared and they're anxious, they're just going to pass it on to the students. And in truth, the students have more contact with the teachers than they do with me. So I've got to make that the environment that's truly caring. So as I build that with the teachers this week, that's the goal. And then what I'm doing is I do weekly meetings with the parents. Whenever I'm available, sometimes it's the morning, it's coffee with the principal. We've done dinner with the principal, lunch with the principal, tea with the principal. They were joking, nightcap with the principal next week, whenever it's available. But I talk to the parents because their ability to just ask me questions has helped decrease anxiety about opening school with their children. And so, again, they can be supportive at home. And there's a lot of questions we don't know answers to, but we focus on those ones that we do have the answers to and how we can support them. And then we seek feedback. So I want to know from the students, what went well the first week of school? You're going to tell me these are the things I liked. These are the things that, hey, I could have used a little bit more support. And so I'm creating some feedback systems and surveys to give the students back in a non-threatening way. We're not trying to punish teachers. We're all doing this together. So that way I can kind of guide and direct and mold where we need to be going and create an environment. And then don't forget, middle school, part of it is clubs and activities on school. Don't throw those out the window. So we're still planning and finding virtual ways to have clubs and little pep rallies. And, as principals, there's a lot of pressure right now that we all need to be YouTube stars as well. So every week we have to send a video that goes viral. But I'm sending out my videos every week to just keep people connected to me as a person, to the school. So they're still, Marshall's a great school. They're still connected to being Marshall as a community as best as we can.
Thanks, Mark. That sounds great. And you mentioned the number of minutes and what you're trying to do as far as connecting folks. We'll get more into that too as we talk about the social emotional needs of students and adults. But tell me about the quality piece. Are folks, doing school-wide assessments and then reframing their teaching, doing interventions? So, talk to me a bit more about that, about assessments, interventions, meeting the needs of all students throughout the day.
Yeah, assessments was key before. The great thing that's happened with this transition is I've been the principal of the school. I just finished 9 years, starting my 10th year. Since year one, I've been trying to get common assessments across the school. I have not successfully done it, but this is the kick that I'm finally able to get common assessments across the school, because they said, hey, we all have to have a common assessment so we can measure what's going on. So we have created common assessments for this year. Our district has contracted with a company called Paper. It's like paper.co. And that is a way for us to provide interventions with them. I have also worked with Pasadena City College. They have a great tutoring program, and I hire their tutors and they come in. And so because they're only doing 300 minutes a day in the afternoon, the instruction ends around 2:10. Between 2:10 to 3:30, we bring in these tutors, and then the teachers refer them to the tutors, and we work in small environments to help build the tutoring. And it's targeted primarily in writing and math. And then you have your ELD and your special education instruction and services that need to be provided, trying to do those on those outside times when people can meet with them. Equity, it's going to be even bigger. If you have a parent that has a graduate degree and is now at home supporting their child, even greater is that than a family that you have maybe 4 kids in one house trying to do live streaming at once on one internet service where it's going to crash, it's going to become issues. They don't have someone to help them out. So the gaps are going to widen during this time. And so there is a lot of pressure on us as school sites, and leading with the lens of equity of what are the things I can do to make sure these kids don't fall behind. And that is the frequent and the short assessments that we're doing, and trying to use those additional minutes in the afternoon to connect one-on-one with kids. Some of my teachers are going to try when we open to do individual meetings with students once a week and see if they could fit that in. You have to have about 180 kids, so I don't know how they're going to do that, but they're going to pilot that for me and then see if they can develop a good plan, so then we can carry that to the rest of the site. So I'm just going to be some of my good teachers who, let me experiment with this, let me try that. Okay, you go, I'm going to give you that freedom. And if it doesn't work, it's okay, we tried it. If it does work, then let's spread that and make it a systematic thing that we do.
Right on. Thank you, Mark. Dion, what about you? How are you reopening your district, but more importantly, your site? How are you reopening? And you have reopened, you said, the school year. Yeah. What does it look like? And how are you ensuring quality and equity for your students?
So we started school back on August 3rd. So we are now in our second week of school. Same sort of thing. We didn't get solid what we were going to do until about a few weeks before school started. So you just kind of have to have patience and grace and just kind of roll with it. So lots of glitches have been occurring. You have teachers whose internet service goes out in the middle of their Google Meets, because we use Google Meets and Zoom as our platforms. Still have students that don't have devices. So working on getting devices to everyone so that they can connect and get learning. And then how do you deal with attendance with students that don't have devices yet? So really, it's a lot of troubleshooting as you go. So and teamwork. So being in the boat and, okay, we need an extra oar, somebody get me another oar so we can keep the boat going. The big thing that I've really impressed upon my staff is that we want everyone to have a voice. So when we came up with our distance learning schedule, because we are full distance learning, we made sure to have many stakeholders at the table. So it wasn't only just my certificated staff, not just admin. We had classified staff there. We had some of our community members there, students. Everybody had a voice, because we know we don't have all the answers. We never will. And there's always going to be gaps. So we're trying to make sure that everybody can be involved, because the more information they have and the more connected they can be to the process, then the better it will be all the way around, and people can help lower that anxiety. As we've been moving through, it really has been a thing of checking in on everyone. As Mark shared, there's a lot of anxiety, lots of it. It's starting to come down. I think what helped a lot was basically in spring, the distance learning for us was the pilot, where kids were held harmless. So it was really having teachers get comfortable with distance learning and the platforms and kind of experiment during that time. So right now it's really just checking in with everyone, making phone calls to teachers, making those phone calls to parents, making phone calls to students. I've been emailing students, calling them. Counselors have been doing the same. It's really just the connectivity, because second week of school as we're starting, we're also concerned about the enrollment numbers. What about those kids who haven't logged in yet? Asynchronous or synchronous, we don't know. So we're doing wellness checks involving our health services, our district police to check do home visits. So there's lots of pieces. And the big thing is you don't know all the pieces that are missing from the puzzle till you get going. And then you just kind of fill them in as you go.
Right on. Thank you. I have to thank you for mentioning the importance of working together. We've been saying on every one of our broadcasts that the key is collaboration, right? This isn't about top down. It's about all of us coming together using, our best thinking, our best energy to co-create and collaborate. And in doing so, we have a real chance of being successful. Stan Rose, who I've known for a long time, asked a question about whether or not your teachers are teaching from home or in the classroom. That's typically a negotiated issue. So I suspect that's, as far as how that came to be, is probably better a superintendent question. But curiously, are your teachers teaching from home or in the classroom? And do you have intervention time for your students, Dion?
All of our teachers are teaching from home. It's not allowed for any of them to teach in the classrooms right now. And that did come from board and cabinet. So not at this time, no one's in the classroom. And then, I'm sorry, what was the other part? What else did you ask me?
How do we provide, I saw the question come across the feed there. I think it was Liz asked how we're providing interventions. Do you have intervention time built into the day, built into the week, outside of just the synchronous or asynchronous learning opportunities?
Yes, we absolutely do. And a little bit to piggyback on what Mark was saying earlier, it's a lot of using our paraprofessionals in the pullouts and then even after school. So we're still doing our CAPS programs after school for extension and intervention time. So we really are doing our best to mirror our on-site systems virtually to the best that we can.
Thank you. Buck, how about you? What's your plan? And how are you ensuring high quality, equitable learning for all students?
You know what, Wes, I'm glad you mentioned that, you need to have all hands on deck. That was really the theme that Superintendent Ralph Porras shared with us at our morning meeting this morning. This is typically the morning where we have a pancake breakfast served with sausages, where our entire district gets together and gets excited about the new school year. So obviously things were a little bit different. There's no pancakes and sausage when you're on the virtual format. But one of the things that he talked about was getting all hands on deck. And I think that really became apparent last April and May when we were in an emergency situation. What we did was we kind of steered that ship into harbor. And then as soon as the school year was over, we put into place about a 50-day plan, counting down from the end of one school year to the scheduled start of the next. And we went into action to try to give our teachers and our classified staff the skills that they would need in order to build that quality program that you're talking about. So we had about 30 teachers from Forest Grove and Robert Down, the two K through 5 schools in our district, and then about another 30 teachers from our high school and the middle school attend a virtual teaching academy that was put on by the University of Phoenix. After that, we had a week of planning in July that started 2 days after we found out that we were going to be in a distance learning only mode. So we went from having training with our teachers, building a distance learning plan in support of hybrid learning, to building just a straight distance learning plan. We looked at building pacing guides that were aligned throughout the district. We also built the daily and weekly schedules that we would follow. Our teachers went through the educational apps that we'd be using. And then they also looked at the assessment. They looked at the initial assessments that we'd be giving to try to identify the gaps that our students were going to come to us with based on the learning loss from the spring, and then the ongoing assessments that we would use to ensure the quality of education was there, class by class, grade by grade. And then finally, we just had 5 days of professional development and planning for all of the teachers in our district. And really, I think that one of the things that's been the most inspiring for me is to see everybody doing their part, whether they're classified, certificated, or admin. Everybody knows that this is a special time, and they are proud to build this ship that we're going to launch on Wednesday. So we'll see how things go. Right now, I'm kind of like that kid that's on the high dive, walking out to the end of the board, and I'm not exactly sure how it goes, but I'm ready to take that jump anyhow.
I look forward to seeing your jump, Buck. Hey, I know, Buck. You've got a school activity, virtual activity, tonight. So I'm going to give you the next question. In fact, I'm going to feed you 2 questions, and so you can beg out when you need to, my friend. And I know you do something called mindful moments. The next question I have is, as all of you, the 3 of you are looking at high quality learning for your students, you're also looking at social emotional supports for your students and your adults. You've hit on it a little bit. Buck, can you tell us what you're doing intentionally to address the social emotional needs of your students and adults? And then finally, before you sign off, let us know, because I know you're a positive cat. What gives you hope, man? What gives you hope? What makes you go to bed every night saying, you know what, tomorrow's going to be a good day in California for California students?
I think that one of the things that we do as far as social emotional learning goes, Wes, is that we keep it at the forefront of absolutely every single thing that we do. One of the truths I think that all of us know is that unless a child feels safe and a child feels loved, then it's really hard for a child to actually learn. So what we're doing is we have our counselors are going to keep doing the individual sessions and the group sessions with the groups that they've been meeting with. And then also the counselors are going to try to do a school-wide effort to help us implement the toolbox. And the toolbox is really where that mindful moment comes from that you're talking about, Wes. And every morning we send out a video where we sit, and with our students, we use our breathing tool. The literal tool that we talk about is a tape measure. And we take a measured breath in and out. And together, as a school, we have that mindful moment. We talk about something that we're grateful for, and make our minds go positive at the very start of the day. This is a carryover from something that we had been doing at lunchtime before school closed. And, if you want to talk about something that gives me hope, one of the things that gives me hope is the growth that our teachers and our staff has shown by having to go to this virtual format. And I would even extend that to our school board. We have had greater attendance at our school board meetings in this virtual format by far than any other meetings that we had ever had before. And so what people are giving us is the most valuable resource that they have, which is their time. And if this virtual format has led to people spending a little bit more time with us, then boy, that gives me hope. That working with our parents, working with our teachers, working with our classified staff, that we're going to come out of this on the back end stronger than we went in.
Yeah, thanks, Buck. I can't thank you enough for being a part of this. I know you've got to go.
Thank you, Wes.
We've been saying throughout that we have to reframe this crisis as an opportunity to improve, to grow, to be better when we come through this than when we entered it. And that's exactly what you just said. Folks, you can check out his YouTube videos. They do the mindful moments on YouTube. Buck, thank you. Dion, how about you? What are you doing at the high school level to address the social emotional needs of your students and the adults that you lead?
So, in focusing in the staff first, we're making sure that we're still celebrating our staff at all of our meetings. So giving them the opportunities. I'm always saying, even in the midst of crisis, we all still have something to celebrate and be thankful for. So, and we share those things, and then we make sure that we celebrate each other. As far as our students, we do have all of the same counselor supports that Buck was sharing, but we're intentionally making individual contact with students. For example, every day I communicate and connect with 10 students minimum and make sure that they get to see their principal, because now I'm not in front of them. They don't get to see me running around and being wild and crazy with them. But just making sure that they know, hey, I do still absolutely love and care about you, and I want to know how things are going on with you. Because as we know, students, a lot of times the safest place that they have is at school and with our staff members and our family at school. So making sure that they know that their school family is still here and we still care about them. And it's not just about their academic process, it's their overall well-being.
Wow, that's awesome. And you know, connections, we heard from our expert last week, when we talk about social emotional needs, those connections are essential to meeting the needs of students in particular, but also to adults, and you address both. Mark, you mentioned this at the onset, so I know this is something that's important to you. What else would you add about, intentionality, meeting the social emotional needs of students and adults at your school site?
No, thank you. I really just appreciated, what was just said. I'm already planning, I got to add a celebration to my staff meeting this week to make sure we do that. You have to make sure that you are building those connections with the students. And when we open school next week, we're helping teachers set up some lessons where let's not jump right into content. It's how do you build connections virtually with people. When we went to distance learning in the spring, we already knew all the students and that relationship was there. Now we're getting kids we don't know, we've never had in our classrooms. So to build intentional talking to each other, and every year, like most principals, I have a theme for the year, and we made our theme this year, connect. How can we connect with each other as staff? How can we connect with students? And I've asked some teacher leaders to continue hosting happy hours and reaching out to people and making sure teachers are okay. And then with the middle school, we reached out with a local agency here called Foothill Family Services. This week, they're running a program with our parents about how do you deal with anxiety of being in middle school, especially if you're transitioning in 6th grade. How do you help your student to bring in those outside resources so parents know how to work with them and to help, because it is a very stressful experience, distance learning at home with families. So we want to make sure we are addressing those needs.
Thanks, man. That is great stuff. Mark, I'm gonna ask you. You seem like a very, very positive person. Haven't had the great fortune of working a lot with you, but can tell that you are hopeful. You are positive. What gives you hope right now? There are lots of things that could discourage us. What gives you hope for public education, for your students, for the adults in your care?
Yeah, public education, I almost treat it like a religion to me, like it's this belief that it's the only one true way to live life. But when I'm very stressed out about opening school, and it's all very different. And today was our first day we had to do textbook distributions. And due to the health regulations put upon us, we are limited to only 10 people to distribute 10,000 textbooks in 4 days. And they can only be employees of our district. So here we are, we're out there today. The line was about an hour and a half long for people to get in. I was stressing out. What a bad first impression we're making for families. And every single time I walked up to the window of the car and handed these kids these loads of books, it was the joy that the families just shared just to see me, the joy that I felt to see those students, it just reinvigorated me. And that hope is that, they still want to learn and they're still craving instruction. And I cannot forget that, how much those kids love and enjoy being a part of our school and community, and that what a great opportunity I have to serve them and to be their principal. And it just really gave me strength today, standing out in the hot sun, delivering textbooks, running behind that. You know what? It's going to be okay. Everyone believes that together we can do this.
Oh, man, absolutely. Thanks for saying that, too. As a superintendent, we had a rule in each of my districts for the central office leadership, cabinet leadership. The rule was one site every day. We had to get to a site every day and see students because they're a source of inspiration. They remind us why we do this work and why we need to continue to get better at it. Dion, bring us home. What gives you hope for the system, for your school in general? What gives you hope?
I'm super excited because, I know my staff is amazing. They just are just one of a kind. But as I've been talking to students last week and then today, the students are like, Ms. Clark, are you sure that our teachers haven't been doing this for the last 3 years or so? Because they're like pros. It's like they know what they're doing. Like, so you've been holding out on us. So my teachers and the staff overall, even the classified staff, everybody has just really stepped up to do whatever it takes to get it done. And it is just absolutely, it just warms my heart that we all do whatever it takes to make it happen for our kids. And our students are so thankful and they're so positive. There really hasn't been much negativity whatsoever. And I just think it goes to the teamwork overall.
Yeah, right on. Well, hey, I have to thank Mark and Dion and Buck for joining us tonight. I want to thank all of you. Let me say this. I've said before that lots of different groups give me hope and confidence. Certainly when district and county leaders stepped up and made tough decisions, absent state guidelines or support, that gave me hope. That inspired me. I'm also equally inspired by site leaders. When there isn't anyone else to show up and pass out 10,000 textbooks, when there isn't anyone to pass out meals for our needy families, when some folks are allowed to volunteer to provide educational opportunities of high quality that are equitable to students, our site leaders are stepping up and ensuring that students get no less. And so to all of you who are site leaders out there, you inspire me, you give me hope. Well, everybody, thanks again for joining us on Common Purpose and Common Times. We'll be here again next Monday, unless you don't want to come by and see us next Monday, and then we won't. In the meantime, though, stay safe, be well. We'll see you soon.